States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We'd like to start off tonight with a presentation on our plan for winter athletics. And I want to thank both Mr. Riley and Mr. Brzezinski for being here tonight. So that way we can do this presentation for the school committee and give you the opportunity to ask us questions. And then later on in the agenda for action items, we do have an action item to approve the winter athletics as presented. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Brzezinski and Mr. Riley, and they're going to present the PowerPoint that we have in front of us.
Thank you. I'll just, so as you can see, I just wanted to start off with just a little overview and update on what happened in the fall. We had a very successful fall. You can see how many, we had 135 student athletes, 13 total coaches, 9 teams. It was an extremely unusual fall in that we were fortunate to start. We stopped. We started again, we stopped one more time, and thankfully we finished extremely successfully. And those 135 student athletes made the most out of the season that we were able to provide to them. You can see the number of practices and competitions we completed, and thankfully, proudly, we, between all of those games and competitions, we had 0 positive cases. We did have between 4 and 6 close contact athletes that were quarantined, but all the coaches, student athletes, and again, you'll see the teamwork provided by all of the above allowed us to have a really successful fall. So we were thankful for that. Just wanted to provide you with that brief overview. The roadmap just shows you that there's a lot of hurdles we had to go through, and we have a lot of guidance that we were able to receive from starting with the EEA. It then goes to the MIAA, the sport committees who made modifications. Those modifications, some were more drastic than others. The sports medicine committee then reviews the modifications. They made some changes in a couple of them that went back to the sport committees who updated based on the guidance provided them. That then goes forward to the MIA COVID task force, then to the board of directors. After those approvals, it went to our league, our mid-watch league, and then our district, which is District 3, which includes roughly 36 schools in Central Mass. Again, the approvals came through with some modifications and guidelines, and that brings us to where we are tonight with our hope of getting this through Marlborough High School. And again, I just want to point out, our main focus has been, continues to be, and always will be the health and safety of our student athletes. Just a brief timeline here. You can see that typically in a normal year, we would have started winter sports on November 30th. That was pushed back to December 14th, this coming Monday. Preseason will be the 14th, 23rd. We built in a little bit of a grace period there. The grace period is more so that we can have some limited practices, some remote sessions, again, around the holidays, trying to figure out what's going to be best for each district, et cetera. And then we'll resume when we get back after the holidays on January 4th. And the first date for competitions was agreed in our district and our league to begin January 8th. Again, these dates are guidelines and subject to change. Move on. You can see the sports that we're offering: boys and girls basketball, boys and girls hockey, gymnastics, swim and dive. A couple of those are co-ops. The co-op teams we're working with are all within our pod. We have a pod format. I'll discuss that in a minute. We moved indoor track to fall 2. We're looking at some limited practices for those folks to get them ready for their season. And then wrestling was moved to the spring. Obviously very high risk sport. So that was moved to the spring. I mentioned co-op teams. We've co-opted in the last, I don't know, I believe 3 to 5 years on all of these. Boys hockey is AMSA, girls hockey, we're a guest at Algonquin. Gymnastics, we host Neshoba, and then swimming, we're a guest with Neshoba as well. And again, all those teams and schools are in the pods that we are playing in, so that we're limiting the exposure with who we're interacting. Things that was voted on throughout Central Mass, not only our District 3, but also District 2, which includes all of Central Mass, Southern Worcester County League, etc. We will not allow spectators at our winter contests to start. Again, it's something we believe in the safety of our student athletes, our buildings, as we try and navigate through this. It's what's best to keep our kids playing and give them the opportunity. We're going to analyze it as the season moves on. We'll revisit it. We also got some work to do to figure out a way to honor our seniors and recognize them and let their families be involved. We're working on that as we speak. As I mentioned before, with all the guidance, the sport modifications, those rules and rule changes were put in play to make it as safe as possible for our kids between the sport committees, the sports medicine committee, COVID task force, etc. These modifications, we believe, allow the kids the best opportunity to safely play the winter sports. I mentioned our pods, and pods is basically a way that we are limiting travel. It's based on our geography, leagues, and we divided our schools based on that through our Central Mass. The majority of our pods are divided based on our mid-watch league, so that the teams will only play within their pod. They are not allowed to leave the pod for scrimmages or any other games whatsoever. With that, playing a shortened season, but again, the goal is just to bring some normalcy to the kids and get them out on fields and courts and rinks, etc. So as I mentioned, our pods, as you can see, we're going to play Hudson, Neshoba, Maynard, Clinton, Westboro, and AMSA. In basketball, the majority of those are mid-watch schools, with the exception of AMSA, who obviously being in Marlborough makes sense for us to be involved with them. Our boys hockey pod, we limited hockey. We did it based on rink locations. Hockey is one of those sports where people travel all over the place. We were fortunate to be able to put a pod together where we are staying in Marlborough with Naven Rink, our home rink, the New England Sports Center, and then North Star Rink, which is in Westboro. Soccer, there are only 6 involved in our league. It's a pod, stay in that pod and only league play. So we'll end up playing some of the same schools 2 and 3 times. But again, safety is the number one concern and staying within the pod. Gymnastics, same thing. We only have 6 schools in that. And swimming, also a Central Mass sport, but swimming's a little bit different, where all of the meets are going to be remote. So we will compete against another school, but we'll do it at our own pool. They'll be at that pool and record the times, etc., and then compare them based on that. Transportation, again, one of the things we really considered in our pod play is to limit limit how far we go and what we needed for transportation. One of the things that will change for us is all of our teams will travel separately. So our JV1, JV2, and varsity teams would all get their own buses. Just again, it's trying to limit exposure. And should we run into an instance where there was transmission on a team, it wouldn't shut down an entire program. And we think it's the smartest way to go. Buses, I've put together a seat chart on a bus to meet COVID needs, and again, face coverings required at all times. Student athletes will be given a seat on the bus, and that's their seat for the year. So again, we'll do what we can to keep things as safe as possible for kids. And again, families, as we've done in all of our seasons, they know that they're required to get kids to and from practices. The Mid-Watch League protocols, we have put together a document that is as inclusive and exhaustive as we could have done. It's about 16 pages that covers everything from, as you can see there, general guidelines to preseason, practice sessions, competitions, game day management, what it looks like for athletic trainers, training rooms, and then rosters sizes. We have covered everything so that everybody in our pod is following these guidelines exactly, so that we feel comfortable and safe when we go to another school that they are doing things exactly as we are, and safety is our concern. Unfortunately, with what's going on, the decision was made to not offer middle school athletics for this winter. We typically have basketball for our boys and girls teams. Again, it was just from a safety standpoint, nobody felt they could offer it at this time. Again, we will reevaluate middle school athletics, and hopefully we can get them out there in the spring season. So we are confident that we can provide a safe opportunity for our winter athletes, just as we did for our fall athletes. We will continue to follow the guidelines that are recommended to us through the state, the MIA, COVID task force, sports committee, but please understand that our safety is the number one concern for us, and social and emotional piece is important. Safety is number one. Okay. Listen, your time.
Thank you, Mr. Rudzinski. Now I'd like to ask the mayor if there's any questions. And Mr. Rudzinski, if you can, when answering questions, if you could just be a little bit closer to the mic, just so you don't break up, okay?
Sure.
Thank you.
Questions from the committee. Ms. Bowen-Henninger.
Thank you. Thank you for that presentation. Can you hear me? I can never tell if anybody
Yes.
can hear me with the silly mask on. I have a couple of questions. One is, can you give me some idea of, and Mrs. Hennessy may want to chime in on this, I guess, about what the modifications and rule changes are? Like, I can kind of wrap my head around all of the sports except basketball. I can't get there. So can you help me with some of the modifications that are going to be made?
So the modifications for basketball, I'm sorry, I didn't get you clear.
Yeah, basketball in particular, but if there are other modifications for the other sports that you could give us an idea. Swimming is obvious because they're going to not be in the same pool, but.
So, and again, I apologize, I didn't get you clearly. You wanted the modifications for basketball?
Yeah, what they're looking for, Mr. Rudzinski, is can you give examples for modifications that we've made to make sure that the student athletes, although we all understand that being indoors is a higher risk than being outdoors, what modifications have been made to the sports to try to make them as safe as possible?
Thank you, yeah, and I apologize. So for basketball, a couple of things. Let me start with, there will be no jump balls. So there'll be a coin toss at the beginning of the game. As far as the actual playing surface, benches, there need to be socially distant benches. So chairs will be 6 feet apart. I don't know if they're kind of going to be, if you look at our gym, we're fortunate we have a large field house, so it's easy to do with 2 rows of chairs. Out of bounds plays underneath the basket, there won't be any of those. The ball is moved to the sideline. There'll be a 6-foot barrier between the inbounds pass and the defender, again, to try and keep social distance. On foul shots, there will be only 2 people in the lane. They won't be people crashing into the boards. Referees have been instructed that if there is congestion under a basket in a particular play, blow the whistles quickly. Quick whistles will be on anything where there's a loose ball if 2 people are on the floor. They're not going to be typically, basketball players wrestle for the ball, kind of roll around a little bit. There won't be any of that. They'll be really quick. And, that's kind of it for basketball. One other thing, there'll be no half times. There'll be 2.5 minutes in between quarters, just again to try and limit, how much time they're inside and where kids would stand. When players come out of a game, there'll be a designated area for them to get a mask break and a water break. Again, we're fortunate in our gym to have a large field house where we're going to have spots at the end of our end of the bench for the home team, as well as the visitors, where they'll go. There'll be a circle. very socially distant from anyone, and that's where they'll go for water breaks. One of the other things I want to add, we are fortunate with our field house. We have doors at both ends. I'll have people standing at the doors, as we'll have them propped open to get air and a good flow in our system, in our gym. So we'll have people there working at the game. Those will be the only people inside the game, just making sure that we can get airflow, which is something that's really good for us.
Hey, Mr. Rosinski, and Mr. Rosinski, if you can you just talk about the mid-watch, how you've accepted the rostering limits for basketball as opposed to what the state had defined?
Yeah, I know it was recommended at 12, and then the board of directors agreed to 15 as a roster, which it typically is. But we decided that a roster in guidance what sports medicine recommended of 12 is the way to go. That way, when two teams are out there, you are under the max of 25 people on a playing surface. With 15, it's a little more difficult. You'd have some people that would actually have to sit in the bleachers and wait during warm-ups. So we think from a safety standpoint, going with 12 was the way to go. And that's what sports medicine recommended. And obviously, they know more than we do, so we went with that recommendation.
Tennessee.
Sorry, just one quick question, Mr. Rosinski, just to make sure that I didn't misunderstand something. For free throws, did Midwatch approve that the first throw in a 2-throw series would be no one underneath for 3 throws, and then for the second, or what would be like the third, if it's a 3-series throw, then there would be 4 people allowed in the key, or did you guys drop it to only 2?
No, I'm sorry. There's 4 in the key. I meant the 2 spots underneath are vacant. Then there will be 2. So essentially, the team shooting free throws would have 3 people, where there's 2 on the defensive block. There's 2 on each side and a foul shooter.
Okay, sorry,
Yep.
I just wanted to clarify that.
Yep, I wasn't clear on that.
No,
My
it's okay.
apologies.
It's been a lot, so it's essentially the first series or the first 2.
Yep, I get it.
Nobody's underneath,
Okay.
just to keep it more space.
Any other questions from the
I
committee?
have another question,
okay,
if
go
you don't mind. Are we going to be able to, at least, obviously can't control other venues, but when kids are participating in district, will we be able to broadcast any of the events so that families will be able to at least watch the games remotely?
Yeah, one of the things, actually, we have a meeting scheduled tomorrow, but it's been agreed upon that our goal is to live stream as many games as possible. We're fortunate that we'll be able to do it for all of our home games. I've been assured of that, and we were able to do it in the fall. And everybody in our pod it's a goal to live stream. If they can't live stream, they'll be able to video it, and we will have the ability to put it on, whether it's Marlborough's channel through YouTube or WMCT is very willing and interested in working with us. I spoke with Matt Passaccio, and he wants to get involved in all of our games.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? Mrs. Hennessy?
Sorry, just another clarification to make sure is for substitution, at least on basketball, only 1 sub can go to the table at a time. So it is a different process. You cannot take 2, 3, 5. You cannot take the whole amount. It's 1 at a time, which obviously does limit things down some as well, correct?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, just 1 will go to the table, and even if you're making multiple substitutions, they're going to make it known to the official when they call in the first person. If they have other subs, they'll just leave from their bench in the appropriate spot.
And one other question around that, are you all thinking that people will actually have assigned seats on the bench so they come and go to that same seat so they're not potentially going to other places?
Absolutely. Everybody's going to get their assigned seat, and games, practices, they're going to have an X in the gym where their bag and things go each time. We're going to be down to the point where everybody will be in the same spot all of the time.
Okay, thank you. And then if I can ask the question, hopping over to ice hockey.
Sure.
I know bench-wise, there definitely are a lot of limitations and concerns that were brought up when we were having discussions at Sports Med about some of the limitations just at the rinks. And I'm not really familiar with all of the rinks. I mean, I know Naven pretty well, but how are you feeling about the size of the benches to be able to accommodate, or are you guys thinking of other ways of placing kids to spread them out?
Yeah, so actually, I was at the rink today. We had a meeting at Naven with their management and at the Sports Center. And so the Sports Center typically uses, I don't know if you're familiar with it, you typically use rink 1. They're going to be using rinks 3 and 4 instead this year. We only played probably 2 games there this year for us. It's an away game, but they moved to those rinks because they were able to expand the benches, take down a wall, and benches will be socially distant. Everyone will be 6 feet apart. At Naven, we're very fortunate because we have plenty of space, and we went there today with tape measures, and we have more than enough space for everybody to safely be seated.
Great. Thank you, Jeff.
Any questions? Ms. Matthews?
Thank you, Jeff. And I want to congratulate our district and especially Marlborough for no cases and practicing all great protocols and procedures. One question I do have for you, Jeff, and obviously you said you did a 16-page document for protocols. Has there been consideration, not that it's a CDC guideline, but for the athletes to be screened with attestations and temperature checks for both practices and game day? Not, when forced with the question of how are you feeling today and how is everybody in your house feeling, sometimes you get a little bit more honest an answer rather than just the child standing there in front of you. And also, if we're logging their temperatures, we may see a change in an athlete that they may not have known was happening or wanted to talk about.
Yeah, so we have a strict attendance list of, which is essentially the roster. On that roster, we have a list of questions for each athlete. Basically, we ask the fever, do you have a cough, a sore throat, shortness of breath? Have you been around or near or associated or cared for anyone that showed COVID symptoms? And we ask every athlete that who shows up. There has been some talk about temperature checks, and I guess it's something that we're considering right now, but we keep that list with us at all times. We did have some kids, as I said, in the fall that missed practices or games, and we go through that checklist very carefully and make sure if there's a reason from a medical standpoint that we have it fully documented so it doesn't spread within the team.
Terrific.
So
Thank you very much, Jeff. I appreciate that.
Other questions? Ms. Bodenhead?
I have one more question, and then I see Allison has a question too. Gymnastics,
Yes.
protocols for cleaning equipment in between athletes, how's that all going to work?
Yeah, gymnastics. So again, today there was a town hall meeting from the MIA on that, and with gymnastics, you only have rosters of somewhere between 12 and 14. They are typically 10 to 14 feet apart at all times. Gymnastics, as far as the protocols, we use an offsite facility, and they temperature check because it's part of their business before you come in, hand sanitize, have stations throughout. Equipment, typically they have people that rotate, like somebody would start on floor, somebody would go to beam. They're gonna all be on the same apparatus so that they only clean it once and you don't have to keep going through and cleaning apparatus in between. And then it's still to be decided of whether or not we're gonna have meets, in-person dual meets with 2 teams, or whether they're gonna be virtual. We're still working through that within our league. Again, the guidelines allow you to have in-person meets. We're trying to decide what's gonna be the best for us.
Excellent. Thank you.
Any other Mr. Caruso?
Yeah, Jeff, I have a few questions about the timeline. not the timeline itself, but what happens in these periods. In the preseason timeline, I assume part of that is tryouts, I would assume?
Yes, correct.
So what else would, and there'll be practices, obviously. What's the frequency of practices and length of them during that time?
Allison has one. I just wanted to
Yeah,
make
so
sure.
one of the
I know it
things we
varies
put
from
together
sport. I know it probably
in
varies
our
from sports.
guidelines was, there's a maximum amount of practices and times that you can be together per week, not to exceed 5 between practices and games, and the duration not to exceed 90 minutes, which is less than what typically happens in a normal year.
And in the grace period, you say limited practices, and I understand the remote contact, but is that something you would normally do anyway during the Christmas period, let's say? Is that something you do with, because I'm sure there's, well, I don't know, in the past, have you had games during that time? I'm sure you have. Come to think, I used to drive school bus, you think I know that? Yeah. But in terms of limited practices, is that something you're,
Yeah, typically we're playing games during the Christmas vacation where there's holiday tournaments. We typically have a couple of basketball and a couple of hockey games during that time. And there was a couple of schools of thought on the grace period. Originally, we thought it was going to be a good time to just take a break and let people be with their families, but and Mr. Riley may be able to address this in the principals meeting. There was some discussion that it would probably be more beneficial to some communities to have the kids being with their teams to make sure, ensuring that they're doing the right thing and people aren't traveling and going away and then possibly bringing that back to their team. So we put limited practices in there because we're not sure what we're going to do yet. Mr. Riley and I have talked about it, and we think it might be better to have the kids show up a couple of days just to have them accountable and make sure we know where they are a little bit.
Thanks, Mr. Rudzinski. I think from the principal standpoint, what we were talking about is the need for some local control over the decision-making based on the health and safety of each community. So in some communities, there probably needs to be more reinforcement of less activity happening during the break. And in other communities, they might be able to have practices. So that sort of grace period really came back to, from the principal standpoint, the opportunity for our school districts to leverage the local control over that and decide what was best for our community, and even make that decision a little closer to that grace period.
Well, every time we hear these things, I want the public to know that there's a lot of thought that goes behind everything. That's why when I ask these questions, I'm not questioning your judgment. I'm just trying to make sure that your thought process is thoroughly out there, so no one questions your judgment. Thank you both.
Allison?
Yes, thank you. Hi, Ruds. Can you talk about the swimming modifications? Because obviously we can't wear masks in or out of the water because we're wet and but we still have to practice dives and all that, so.
Sorry, Mr. Rudzinski, you're still muted. Can you please unmute?
Sorry, Ruds, I muted you.
So this technology, you're way ahead of me, Dan. Yeah, so swimming's going to be, it's a challenge, but with only one team in the pool, they've made sure that per event, people are going to be socially distant before they get in the pool. As soon as they get out, they're going to get, obviously dry off, get their mask, and then the next individual will go in. And one team in the pool. That's basically the modifications that they put forth for swimming. So you don't have anyone else in the facility at all.
Tennessee.
Sorry, just to elaborate a little bit though, swimming, they did actually have some swimming competitions in the fall. So there were a few schools that already did use the modifications initially in the fall. And then we did a second round of modifications based on some of the things that they found that worked better. They're having lane differentials, so there will be lanes in between, like a space. You come to the blocks, you must have a mask on. They'll actually have a plastic baggie that you put it into and seal it up, and it is taken to the other end to meet you at the other end of the pool. So you get your mask back, it's in a plastic baggie, so that then gets thrown out in the end. So there's not a cup or something else that holds it. Obviously, you're not wearing your mask while you're swimming, but there has been that distance made, and then there is some thought from the epidemiologists that the chemicals that are obviously within the pool water are probably limiting some of the spread anyway. On relays, they actually have it down like very clear about not standing next to each other. So everything's separated out. Yeah, I think those were like many of the main points, Allison, but sorry to jump in there, Jeff, but I have it here.
You know the swimming better than I. Yeah, we're a guest, so I haven't been as up on the swimming as I was the others.
Yeah, and one other thing about gymnastics, not to get too far away from that, but they did have some gymnastics competitions specifically out in the western part of the state in the fall. Everything had worked very well. They did not have any kind of sicknesses that had come about. We had a few modifications that were made from the fall to the winter, and a lot of it is all around cleaning and consistency of cleaning and keeping people separate. So, sorry, those are the two.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Jeff, one question about, you said Midwatch isn't doing any of the athletics for the middle school. Have we considered doing any intramural or anything to get the kids a little active and get them somewhere away from that damn computer?
Yeah. You know what, I haven't talked to Mr. Daniels about it. One of the issues at the middle school is the gym's being utilized for other areas right now, but I will reach out to Mr. Daniels and talk to him about that to make sure.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, sorry, Mr. Mayor. One of the issues that we're also running into is by having our fourth tier of busing, that also removes some of our ability in some ways to have some after-school busing for the middle school, which really is what allows us to promote the athletics. So if we can work through some of those issues, we might be able to do some fun intramural things for the kids. We'll definitely look into it.
Have a 7th versus 8th grade snowball fight. Do something. Get them to move. We got to get the kids to move and get them to do something. So,
Yeah.
Ms. Hennessy.
One thing that I'm wondering about, and you guys may have already been discussing it, but based that we have free testing here in Marlborough, would it be possible to consider, obviously we can't force anything, but would it be possible to make a suggestion, especially after the holiday break, before we actually move into the game schedule, to see if people can utilize the free testing facilities that we have? I know it can't be a have-to, but it seems like something that, we could provide it as an option, especially because with the holidays, there does tend to be a rise potentially. And it gives us that time frame before January 8th of when competitions would begin to allow for that potential of the 4 to 5 day exposure time frame to hopefully catch it. Just an idea, and I kind of, easier to say it out loud than not to say it at all, so.
Don't make any plans for local testing because the state in their infinite wisdom was pulling it. So,
I was just going to say, you didn't watch his press conference today.
I didn't
No.
get that part.
any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Riley.
Everybody.
Thank you, Mr.
Bergeron.
Brzezinski. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I start off my report tonight. I gave the school committee the current active positive and quarantine students in the district as of that date. I did update that information last night and sent it all to you. There have been some additions today that I've also sent to you via email. Obviously, without getting too far into it, we are in a period where there is more significant spread of coronavirus. There are many more cases, and obviously cases across the city increased over the past 2 weeks. We are seeing increased cases among adults working in the school as well. Contacts have increased, and most prevalent where we've quarantined a classroom due to a positive case. When you look at our figures, It's obvious where we have quarantine classrooms because the active contact list is generally much higher. Familial spread of COVID cases is the most prevalent factor in all reporting to the superintendent, and this is also confirmed through the state's contact tracing efforts and reporting. I updated the committee over the past couple days and will continue to update the committee as we move forward. Tonight, I am also proposing to the school committee in my second item to change the FY21 calendar. I am looking to remove the remaining 3 professional development half-days. It is going to cause a burden on the schools. There is no fair, equitable way to deal with the loss of time for our PM kindergarten sessions. Additionally, all 3 days fell on the B cohort weeks, and the already shortened day for students would mean that buses would need to drop off for our 4th tier and immediately start picking up MHS students. It actually would be too close for comfort in some ways. Now, before I had written this, I also wrote that these days fall into proposed MCAS testing. We do know that the commissioner has pushed back some MCAS testing, but some still remains. And it is going to be, a half day is quite burdensome on an MCAS day. It is something that we're not going to be able to do very well. So due to the operational issues and our intent to have as many days as possible with the B cohort, since they missed time during the closures, my recommendation is to cancel the half-days on the calendar for the remainder of the year. I have put a draft calendar into the packet and additionally laid out the A and B cohort days for hybrid for the remainder of the year. My third item, there's an application for a new private school. So tonight at your places, you'll find a packet at your seat for an application from the New England Innovation Academy. Please refer to Policy 3.50 for our process to approve a new private school application. With your approval, I will put this on the agenda for January, and should the committee request it, I will ask for representatives from the New England Innovation Academy to be present to discuss their application with the committee. I have started to review it as well. It is quite complete, and there are some items that may need to be finished compared to our policy, but my conversations are ongoing with them as they are going through their opening phase, if you will. But they gave quite a bit of information. I would love for you to review it. Obviously, if there's any questions I can answer, I've been in contact with this group for the past couple months. I'm happy to continue to be a liaison to get information for you. And at some point when we feel it's the right time, we can certainly invite them to be with us virtually to answer any questions so we can take action on their application. And Mr. Mayor, that is my report for tonight.
Questions from the committee? Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, Mr. Diaz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is tonight's update from Finance and Operations. Food services. The food service program has continued to see great participation from remote learners. The program has served nearly 60,000 meals remotely since October 19th. The continued participation from the community is encouraged and appreciated as it helps support and fund the efforts of our food service employees. Just a reminder that meals are available to all children and teens in Marlborough, including students who attend other schools, schools other than the Marlborough Public Schools. And to anybody keeping count, since March, we've served 285,000 remote meals. I want to take this opportunity to extend our gratitude to the food service staff who are preparing meals for remote learners, serving students in person, and sending a breakfast home at the end of the day. Despite the many changes in service methods this year, they continue to serve the students with a smile. Thank you to them. Facilities. The Marlborough IT department, in conjunction with the facilities department, developed an in-house electronic work order process. Thanks to quick work by Dan Jackson, Andy White, and the head custodians, the new process has been successfully implemented for all district work orders. We continue to receive very fast responses from the facilities department, and this change will allow the communication and tracking processes to become even more efficient. A process such as this is costly. Some districts have to pay a pretty high amount for a software like this, and to be able to develop it in-house, kudos to the IT department.
You sold it to the city for a lot of money.
We can sell it to other districts to recoup some costs.
Yes,
It's a temperature on, just a reminder on school temperatures. As we head into colder winter months, especially with days like today, we want to remind students, parents, and staff that buses as well as schools will be cooler this season. COVID-19 safety guidelines require bus windows to remain open, even on days like today, and school buildings to maximize outside airflow and airflow exchanges in classroom spaces. These efforts will result in cooler buses and buildings, so we ask everyone to please dress warmly before heading to school this winter. Boys and Girls Clubs. The Boys and Girls Clubs currently have 20 spaces available in their elementary schools, in their before and after school program, as well as 21 spaces available at the full day program for remote learners at Hildreth. Financial assistance is available for both. Parents looking for childcare solutions may reach out to the Boys and Girls directly at 508-485-4912. That completes my report. Thank you.
Questions from the committee? Seeing none. Public participation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to let everyone know, the school committee will be holding this meeting virtually with members attending in person and/or remotely. No public attendance will be permitted. For the public participation portion of this meeting, members of the public may provide comment by emailing the superintendent at superintendent@mps-edu.org before 4 p.m. on the above date, or dialing 774-243-0611, conference ID 741-424-795 #. Again, that phone number to call in is 774-243-0611, and the conference ID is 741-424-795 #. Mr. Diaz, do we have anybody waiting on the line?
We have no callers at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz. Again, that phone number is 774-243-0611, and the conference ID is 741-424-795 #.
Any public participation? Any public participation? Seeing none. Winter athletics.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As we did have a presentation, I am asking the school committee to take an affirmative vote to support our plan for participation in basketball, ice hockey, gymnastics, and swimming. As Mr. Brzezinski and Mr. Riley did talk about, there are some other sports that are being moved to different seasons, namely wrestling and indoor track. But this is the plan that we've brought forward tonight for your consideration.
Senesi.
I'd like to make a motion to move forward with the recommendations from Mr. Rosinski to approve participation in basketball, ice hockey, gymnastics, and swimming for the winter season.
Motion made and seconded to approve the recommendation from the athletic director. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. FY21 calendar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I stated in my report, I am asking the school committee to consider removing the half professional development days for the remainder of the calendar year due to the operational burden it's going to place upon our schools, not limited to, but including MCAS testing, busing, and also the impact it would have solely on the B cohort.
Ms. Hennessy.
I'd like to make a motion to support the recommendation of removing the 3 half-day early release days at this point for the calendar of 2020-21.
Motion made and seconded to approve the recommendation of the superintendent. Any further discussion? Ms. Bodenhender.
Thank you. So, Mike, what plans do we have, or Mary, to be able to deliver the professional development?
Yeah,
Will there be ways that folks will be able to access?
So, one of the things we're looking at is expanding the mini courses that we usually offer. So we'll be starting that earlier this year. We are going to try to connect that with our anti-bias and anti-racism professional development, and that way people will be able to self-select and to have choices.
Yeah, and I do remember that we had 10 days at the beginning, but you know, they had a lot front-loaded.
Yep,
I just wanted to see if there would be other opportunities.
there will be.
Thank you.
Other questions from the committee? Ms. Matthews?
Sorry, it's more for Mr. Bergeron. The January 28th is just missing its coloring on the list in the middle there.
Oh,
It's
I
supposed
now
to
see
be a
that.
dark green. You know me. But Denise should have caught that, because she's always the one to make sure that the colors are right.
Any other questions? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Carries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Policies for removal, policy 6.2.
Thank you very much. So I have two policies that I'm looking for removal tonight, one of which will then be replaced with a combo of these, if that makes any sense. So I'd like to remove the existing policy 6.200. And if we can do the same, a motion also to remove policy 6.202.
Motion made and seconded to remove policy 6.200 and 6.202. Any further discussion on that? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Carries.
Thank you very much.
Policy 6.190 for acceptance.
Thank you. So before you, you have a number of different policies, starting with policy 6.190, teacher responsibility, and a few modifications that are in there. I did receive some comments from a number of the members. Mostly, it wasn't really substance as opposed to modifications of spelling or grammar, punctuation, something like that. So I'd like to move forward with a motion to approve policy 6.190, teacher responsibility.
Motion made and seconded to approve 6.190 teacher responsibility. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carries.
Thank you very much. Like to make a motion to approve policy 6.2, and this should be actually 00. It should not be with the 2 that was in there. I don't know how that got in there, but this is basically a combination of the 2 we removed. This has gone through a number of rounds where we had input from the attorneys to align. There was a question that I had received from Mrs. Matthews relative to, in the last paragraph, number 5, it spoke about the superintendent shall submit an annual report to the school committee in November of each year, detailing steps taken and process achieved in implementing this policy. It's all around diversity. We do, on a regular basis, submit diversity information through EPEMS. There are 2 major timeframes, if you will, like October 1st is a big submission, and then as well, I believe it's in March, right?
Yeah, Joe, and we actually update it almost every single day through the SIF protocol, which is basically the state framework to take our information.
So we do have this. It has not been in a process of specifically within November. So we didn't change this within the subcommittee at this point. We looked for having some discussions with the superintendent about that. We can make a modification to this if you would like, but we could get an annual report in November, but basically it's changing all the time.
And,
So-
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No,
Just
please.
so the committee is aware, all of this information is publicly available on the DESI website.
So,
I guess my question would go back to, if it's available all the time, does it need to be is it a requirement of the policy for it to be publicly brought forward to the committee, or can we just strike that?
We could definitely strike
Or,
that.
or
because
change it to say that it is always available on the DESI site?
Right, and that was something which I have to say at this point, with having gone through HR and the attorneys, and that had not honestly come back to us, that was not something that stood out to us as a subcommittee, like, oh my gosh, there's a problem. And when you asked that question, we had a lot of conversation. It is information readily available, and
I'm not trying to make more work for the superintendent, I'm
Right.
trying to take it away.
Personally, I think it makes a lot of sense to just actually strike in regards to any form of a report, since it is readily available. But I did not want to go ahead and make that modification prior to having the conversation with you all, obviously, since this was in process. But that would be my suggestion, is really to strike, the superintendent shall submit an annual report to the school committee in November of each year, detailing steps taken and process achieved in implementing this policy. I would suggest that that actually be removed.
The last sentence.
Yes.
The last sentence can be
Right.
removed too, the report shall include,
Right,
sorry.
so if it is fine with you all, I'd like to make that amendment to the motion to remove that, and I will, strike that out before we would move forward.
Ms. Bodenhager.
Thank you. So just for clarity, in the EPIMS, this reporting that goes to DESI, it's specifically staff people and their race and their ethnicity, and all that is part of that report?
Yes, it breaks it down by race, ethnicity, and also gender. And we also, beyond that, every other year, we perform, I think it's called the EE05 report, which is a federal report on our hiring and hiring practices. So that data is, when you go on the DESI website, there is a district profiles, and you can click on district profiles, and you can click on teachers, and it gives you a whole list of available data that we report almost every single day. So you can have reports on the ages of the teachers on average, the salaries, literally, you can look up just about anything on how many FTE we have and all of those types of information that we report on a daily basis.
Excellent. So I have no problems removing it, but I would like, on some, I don't know, annual basis or semi-annual, whatever, just in the same vein that I was curious about the open positions, more like maybe some sort of an HR report, so we can just be mindful of what steps we are taking to recruit, a more diverse workforce. We know kids do better when they see teachers that look like them. And I think we should always be striving for that. And I would personally like to see, not on any crazy, report, but just some sort of, maybe once in a while, to know what kind of steps we're taking towards that end.
Understood.
Thank you.
So then I'd like to amend my motion, that I'd like to move forward, but have that amendment where we will strike the last two sentences of number 5 relative to the report, if that's, okay. So that's what I'd like to do.
Motion made and seconded to approve as amended. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carries.
Thank you very much. So I'd like to make a motion for approval of policy 6.191, staff dress code.
Motion made and seconded to approve. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carries.
Thank you very much. I'd like to make a motion to approve policy 6.320 for coaches.
Motion made and seconded to approve. Any discussion? Mrs. Matthews.
Sorry, I did have a question, I believe.
It was number
It's on C, yes.
Right.
Sorry. I wanted to, I remember doing this policy when I was on policy and having this conversation.
Yeah.
And when I read the changes that was discussed by the subcommittee, and I did speak to Ms. Hennessy about it, and I'm bringing it back to you, Mr. Bergeron, because C is kind of vague. Coach selection. New candidates will be interviewed by the athletic director and building principal. That says nothing about the selection. That just says the interview process.
I think this is where policy intersects with our actual administration. So I understand that it is vague. We wanted to at least have in there that the building principal will be involved with the selection of coaching candidates.
Which I have no problem with, but does it leave the question open as to who is the ultimate hiring person?
Building principal that's always the case.
Okay.
Any other questions? Ms. Hennessy?
So just for clarity, because when we had this conversation, so Mr. Superintendent, I love your feedback on this, was relative to the word new candidates will be interviewed by the athletic director and building principal. Is it possible to consider that just being candidates will be interviewed by the athletic director and building principal, to your point of having the building principal involved? That way, it's almost like a checks and balance situation on an annual basis.
I see an issue with that. I think that's a reasonable.
When we were having that conversation, to me, it seemed reasonable, but again, not my area to just step in and change it.
No,
So,
I don't think that's an unreasonable ask. I think the principal should be involved in understanding who the coaches are and who's being appointed.
okay, so.
For
If I
all.
can, I'd like
Sorry,
to amend my motion because I'd like to make that change of removal of the word new. Before new, it would just read candidates will be interviewed by the athletic director and building principal. So that would be my motion, just move forward with that.
Motion made and seconded to approve as amended. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, opposed, carries.
Thank you very much. So I'd like to make a motion for approval of policy 6.400, administrative and supervisory positions.
Motion made and seconded to approve. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, opposed, carries.
And I'd like to make a motion to approve policy 6.425, employment of principals.
Motion made and seconded to approve. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, opposed, carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Acceptance of donations and gifts. Target Heroes and Helpers Program, Whitcomb School, $1,000.
Move to approve.
Motion made and seconded to approve. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, opposed, carries. Cummings Properties, Marlborough Public Schools, $1,000.
Move to approve with gratitude, because I know this program, and basically employees of the Cummings Properties are able to choose a charity of their choice, and Cummings Properties makes a donation on behalf of that employee. So, thank you.
Motion made and seconded to approve and thank Bill and Joyce Cummings for all their gifting to
Bonded
the city of
Texera.
Marlborough.
For choosing us.
On the motion, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, opposed, carries. Reports of subcommittees. Ms. Hennessy.
Thank you very much. So we will have a policy subcommittee meeting on December 17th in the morning. We are just continuing to knock down and get through everything to update. So that is it.
Any other committees? Members forum. Ms. Matthews.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask, I know we've all received some emails regarding our return on January 11th. I know, Mr. Mayor, you spoke today at your press conference regarding our return. And I know when we made the decision that we talked about whether or not we would need to meet prior to that. Based on the rise of the cases of COVID And the fact that those numbers really are just now from Thanksgiving, which means by the time Christmas is over, this will be about that time. And unfortunately, I don't feel there's going to be many decreases. I would like to ask that we set a date and time, preferably the Monday, January 4th, to give parents a full week if we should happen to make a change. It does not need to be a 7:30 meeting. I believe there's a city council meeting that night, so maybe early in the day, and obviously it can be virtually that we meet. But I would like to ask for a suspension of the rules to vote on having that meeting, if everybody is willing and able to do that, because I think we can't make a decision today, and we can't honestly say that everything will be peachy keen on January 11th. So.
Discussion. Any further discussion? I mean, I don't have an issue with that. I don't know if we want to leave it to the superintendent to, set a time and place based on his schedule, or.
Well, I'm recommending the 4th for the week, if the time is the best thing.
There's no suspension really required.
Okay.
You can just set another meeting.
A special meeting, sorry.
But
If it pleases the chair, could we set it as a special meeting with one topic? Because we're going to have a school committee meeting 8 days later.
Yep. That's fine. Whatever you and the superintendent are comfortable with, I'm ready to go. So.
Mr. Mayor, I should know this, and I apologize for even asking. What time does the city council meeting start, so that way we don't interfere with that?
8 o'clock.
So would the school committee be opposed to a 6 o'clock meeting? Is that doable? Okay, I see enough heads nodding yes. I think that'll work.
Okay,
Thank you.
good. Any other members? Ms. Hennessy?
Thank you very much. So I had talked about a letter that I was planning on to submit to the commissioner relative to my concerns around MCAS testing and its administration not being considered to be done in a remote way. When I had brought it up to the school committee last meeting, it seemed like a number of you all were interested in potentially signing on to that with making a few minor modifications on the letter. I did make those modifications, and I did send that out to you all as information so that you would have it prior to the meeting. I would just obviously like to publicly request an awareness as to whether you would like to sign on so that I can actually get this out the door. Obviously, we've had changes that have been mentioned towards MCAS that literally just came down yesterday. But it's not really addressing the bulk of the concern about not allowing for modifications to be done for remote testing. We've had success with remote testing on assessing our students here. That is pointed out within the letter. As Mrs. Matthews pointed out to me, there was a woman who actually gave birth and finished her bar exam and passed her bar exam remotely. So kind of seems like sometimes we need to make some modifications, but modifications don't get made if you don't kind of squawk about it. So I'd love, oh yeah, I have the article if you'd like. So I just would love to understand, and it's fine if people don't, but if you'd like to be a part of it, I need to know so I can get this out the door.
You can add my name to it.
I just, it seems like, we just continually send down letters complaining about funding and complaining about this rule and that rule, and we send them down from different organizations, and I don't know, I think there's gonna be additional changes. I'm more concerned with his decision on making enrollment changes to the vocational school than I am about the MCAS exams. I think that has more of an effect on the system, but I've sent down my letter on that and have my discussions with the commissioner, and so it's just, I think there needs to be more modifications. I think they will be making some, but I just don't want to be, here comes another letter from Marlborough.
So you would prefer to not be a part of the letter, which is fine?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's my 2
That's
cents.
that's completely cool, not an issue. Hear you. I have a similar concern relative to your issues that you did mention, but to me, this is just as important and it's a whole separate issue. So, if I can look, yes
I
or
would
no?
have to believe that this came about largely because of letters and other stuff they've received. So there's no problem with me sending them another letter saying, you're almost there.
Keep
You
on
just got to go a
going.
little bit further. So I am definitely on board.
Okay, so Dan's on board, Heidi's on board.
I'm on board, and I feel like if we don't put pressure on them and let them know how we feel, then we're complicit in the bad decisions that they're making.
Okay, thank you. And
You can include me as well.
okay, and I will just, because Mr. Gary had to work tonight, I will connect with him offline, probably tomorrow would be my guess, to just confirm so that I can get it out the door. And I will let you all know once it is sent, because I will obviously copy you on it. I will blind copy you so that you obviously have an awareness in case you get a phone call, okay? And as well.
Are you copying MASC as well, so they have
Oh,
that?
don't worry, yeah. My friend Glenn Kuchar will be definitely copied on that one. So thank you very much, I appreciate it. And that was all I wanted to say, other than since we aren't going to be meeting again before we go on winter break, I would like to say thank you to everyone, staff-wise, administration, our custodial staff has been doing like an amazing job. The food service, like kicking butt like nobody's business. I have to tell you, it's one of those where you puff up your chest and say, yeah, I'm from Marlborough, and we've been taking care of community like all over. And I'm really grateful that I live here in this community. I have to say, I'm proud of what we have been able to do, even though it's been a really challenging time. And thank you to the community for their support and understanding where it's not always so easy and things have had to change quickly. But if you can kind of keep in the back of your mind that everything is being done to try and protect the children and the staff, and the health and safety is really our top priority, but working in tandem with obviously educating everyone. I'm really proud to be a part of this in my own little small way. So thank you to all of you, and thank you to everyone on the committee, because this has been one hell of a year. I'm quite sure we're all going to talk about for a long time later on. So there's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Any other members? Ms. Bodenhead?
Thank you. I have 2 issues. One, Mr. Superintendent, aside from the bit in the commissioner's guidance for the week, there was a number of other topics, and I just wanted to check in regarding the SOA. I know we submitted it. Do you need anything more from us? Are there any tweaks that you're going to make, or is it we're just sitting with what we had before?
I think we're good. I just need to make sure that we're submitted and we don't have any other further action to take. The school committee took a vote on our priorities, and we did submit, but I'm not sure everyone has done that yet. So
I know other communities, yeah,
other
there was some intimating that there were some other communities that had not done it. And I knew that we did, but it also gave the opportunity to reopen it and make any amendments if.
My recommendation is not to reopen it this
Favorable.
time. I am very concerned
Yeah.
that there is no SOA. So
Well,
we
they're
just have to be
talking
honest.
about it, so at least we know it hasn't been
Next letter.
forgotten.
The next letter.
Thank you. And then I just wanted to mention that MEF ordinarily, this is the meeting, or maybe it was the last meeting, where ordinarily MEF gives out their grants. And they are still going to happen, and it will be in January, the end of January. So the teachers, any employee of the district is eligible to submit grant applications. We've got money, and we're looking forward to reading the grants and coming before you all at the end of January to give out those grants.
Anyone else? Ms. Matthews?
I reviewed the warrant and I've signed it, and happy holidays to everyone.
Thank you. Mr. Caruso?
Just one thing, is there any chance somewhere along the line you could give us some idea of how the survey went? In terms of the, didn't have to be tonight, I just.
Are you talking about the survey for parents
Parents,
to
yeah.
choose the?
Choose.
We have closed that for the elementary level. I believe the delta, if you will, was about 21 students, so it was not as large as we thought it was. We're in the process, and every school was calling just to confirm, because there's been misclicks on surveys before, and we just want to make sure that we absolutely have everything down pat and that we have all the right information. So my theory beforehand, my hypothesis, if you will, was that a lot of folks had chosen and we're now in their spot. And I think when you look at the whole 2,500 students in that level, only having 21 move pretty much solidifies a lot of that,
Okay.
what we thought.
Very good, thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none.
Move to adjourn.
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor? Opposed? Carries. Thank you very much and have a great holiday.
Everybody else, same thing.